So hi, Eduardo. Thank you very much for joining me today. Whereabouts are you in Portugal right now?
Okay, I'm talking from Lisbon, close to Lisbon, 30 kilometers from Lisbon here, uh, in the countryside.
And well, of course, the first question should be if you could just please introduce yourself, ALEP, and the role that you're playing in the short-term rental industry.
Okay, hi. Well, I'm Eduardo Miranda. I'm the president of the Portuguese Short-Term Rental Association, ALEP. We call here local accommodation. It's a more attractive name. I'm also helping the European Holiday Home Association as non-executive chairman, helping also to share and spread a little bit of the word of short-term rental and the need of balanced regulation.
I think is it well you can judge my accent. Alojamento local, is that how you say it in
It's perfect.
Portuguese?
Yes, perfect. That means
Perfect.
local lodging, basically. That is
Yes.
a little bit more, embracing the idea of local.
That's right. Yeah, you've got all these different terms now, STRs and VRs and AO in Portugal. So of course you'll have seen the news, and we're recording this just a couple of days after this new decree law has come into effect in Portugal on the 1st of November. Firstly, if you could, Eduardo, if you could give us a little bit of context to what has been agreed over the last couple of days and sort of the process that came to lead up to this decision.
Yeah, the last, I think, 1 year and a half was a roller coaster. And Portugal's general a roller coaster in terms of regulation, because we had previously, before 2023, we have a regulation that was negotiated, was evolving, was one of the pioneers in terms of national regulation for short-term rental, and it was not perfect but quite balanced. And it needed, yes, after 4 or 5 years, as it was a pioneer legislation, we needed some changes. Yes, sure, there were things to make it better, but the reality is that last year, 2023. There was a change in the government. There was enormous pressure, political and public perception pressure, education, health, and then came to housing. And the government, after this change, decided to bring an extreme bill over housing, and short-term rental was an important part of it. Basically, attacking short-term rental was an important part of it. And this bill was not improving or making, the restrictions that were already in place a little bit better or a little bit. No, basically it was changing everything from the scratch. Everything that they did was the same government that did this first regulation. So it was crazy, putting everything upside down. And we had 8 or 9 measures that were completely unreal. That put the great part of the industry was in risk. I can quote 2 or 3 very quickly. For example, we had one extra tax above everything that we already pay. We pay income tax in Portugal for short-term rental. We paid city tax. We pay VAT in Portugal also. And above that, they were creating an extraordinary tax for short-term rental of local lodging that was paid by square meter. It doesn't matter if you are open 1 week or 1 year, it was the same in square meters. That was completely absurd, the number. And they brought many other restrictive rules. Forbidden, for example, was forbidden to open new short-term rental in apartments and buildings in the whole coastal area. Coastal area is much more than only the seaside. It was basically 9% of the touristic areas in Portugal. Unanimous decision from the condominium, the possibility of condominium with 2/3 just to close down all the short-term rentals without a motive. In 2030, all the short-term rental licenses, not the license registrations, would be reanalyzed and reviewed and could be not renewed. They could be just finished. So you had an industry with a time life limit. So it was crazy. 7, 8, or 9 very hard and very strict measures.
So you see the change of the government, that has been the major catalyst. I think it was. I think there was an election back in March. Is that correct? And the new
That's it.
Prime Minister, Montenegro, has come in now.
Oh, the question was not the change. Yes, of course, the change was, the catalyzer and the one that make it viable to change the law. Because this law, although we made a huge, enormous job here with all the industry, was not only the association. The association, was, of course, was leading in many ways, but there are a lot of things that were done by, the grassroots things, organic things that we coordinate, we help them, we put together. But the whole industry went together. And I think we managed to change a lot of the perception. In the end, this part of the law of the government that was basically attacking short-term rental to make short-term rental the scapegoat of housing, it was not so well received as they thought. Most of the population, or at least more than half of the population, were against that. Most of the parties, all the parties except the governing party, voted against, including left-wing parties and right-wing parties. Even some very extreme left-wing parties, they said, okay, it's good to put an extra restriction on short-term rental, but I think you went too far in some points. Okay. And I think that was the whole work of advocacy. And at that moment, we managed to make an agreement with the biggest opposition party, that is center-right, we could say. And from that agreement came a proposal showing that it was possible to come out with an alternative legislation that was balanced. It was not approved at that time because they had the majority. They passed the very hard one, but we kept with this, with this initial agreement. When the election came and the government changed exactly with the same party that we made an agreement, and there were other smaller parties that were also supporting us, we have the right context to come back again with that and to start transforming this negotiation in a real new legislation and regulation. That's the one that just came now and it's in effect since 1st November.
So how has ALEP really advocated for the industry? What have been obviously we know the end goal, but if you could give us a sense of what's really gone into this and the key goals that you wanted to achieve as an association.
I think was a huge moment and a huge learning for us, because we had the industry in risk. At that time everyone was in risk at that time. So we have to put everyone together. So I think the first takeaway that we got is that we have to be together on this. And we means not only the associations, the operators, the property managers, with the small property owners, with the social media groups and whatever. So I think that was one of the most important and first parts of it. We have to put it all together, even if there are the platforms, everyone, even if there are different agendas, we have a main common interest here and a main common threat. So I think that was in the backstage, one of the most important parts. But then we had to do a strategy, and we got the best of the best to help us with the strategy. We get advisors from legal advisors, from PA advisors. We had quite a few experience on that also, because we had to show the community, we have to show the deciders, the influencers, the politicians, the parties, that simply this initiative was completely wrong. They were going to kill short-term rental. They're going to kill an important part of tourism. And that means killing also all the industries that are around, a lot of industry. And that will not solve anything in terms of housing. So we build up a strategy. We call it a 3-level strategy in terms of advocacy, mainly a higher level that we have to be negotiating. We could call it a lobby one, that you have to, talk with the real decisors and try to change or try to create new alternatives. But there is a middle strategy called the public affairs strategy that is basically talking with influencers, the people that influence the deciders, people that influence the public perceptions, to show why it was wrong with numbers, with arguments. And then the grassroots one, showing that short-term rental is based on small owners basically, and they're destroying the life of real people, and that together was the basic of our strategy. Was an 8 months with, I would say dozens and dozens of initiatives that we managed. We were 874 in media, 174 times in television. Me and my board, everyone, I think me, Nuno, and the rest of my board were already starting to be public figures in television, because we have to keep the discussion hot for 6 months, and it's not easy to keep one topic up for 6 months. So it was in one side there was a great learning opportunity to learn about how the world works in terms of political process of decision.
Maybe a bit of unintentional celebrity status there, Eduardo, but I mean we've heard, and I've been following the news, and I've been getting updates from you and other association members. We've heard talks about referenda, we've heard talks about banning of rental licenses, all sorts of potential extreme measures there. And a lot of it also tends to be focused on Lisbon, maybe naturally as the capital. But why do you think this ruling particularly is significant for the whole of Portugal?
You mean the new rules?
Yes.
Yeah, basically what you said is right. Portugal, as it happens in many countries, everything goes around the capital. So everybody takes decisions. The decision makers, the politicians, are always fighting and discussing about the capital and making laws for the whole country, thinking of the capital, of the main city. And that's what's basically what happens. There was a huge political fight over the capital, and so I think and most of short-term rental is outside the big centers, urban centers. It's in Portugal, at least. It's mainly, we're talking in the vacation homes, and we're talking the coastal area, and they were secondary homes, nothing to do with the urban discussion. But even though in the narrative of the attack, they were a target also. Basically, the problem is that housing is a real problem, a serious problem. We cannot deny that it's a real problem. And this is a problem of decades of lack of public policy, some contextual things, true. We are part of also some of the changes that happens in the biggest cities, in some neighborhoods of the biggest cities. But the problem is that the solutions, when you don't do enough or nothing in decades, it takes a lot of time. And short-term rental was an easy way of a scapegoat, because if you say you are canceling or shutting down or forcing to shut down, I don't know, 5, 10 or 15 or 20 or 30,000 short-term rentals, you can use the narrative that they became, you brought back to housing market 30,000 houses. That's something that will take probably 10 years for them to do it. But the question is that most of these houses, they were vacation homes. It's just completely, false narrative. And that was the job that we are doing. So we never ran away from discussing half a dozen neighborhoods where there is a huge concentration. But what we tried was to save short-term rental at a national level. And I think we did it, because this tax, for example, was killing, especially the vacation rental houses in the coastal areas.
I'm glad you've broached that subject about shortage of housing, and there's a lot of political and societal issues all intertwined in one. In some ways, you see some of the more radical measures that are being proposed or implemented. We look at Barcelona as one of the key examples from this year. Budapest, I can think of being one of them. Greece. We're doing legislative stories every week, but this is quite a different angle now to take it, Eduardo. So, what you're seeing in Portugal, at least, how do you think this ruling in your country can be significant for other markets across the continent, worldwide, and really setting a precedent for how to address the shortage of housing and the importance of short-term rentals as a touristic segment?
Well, what I believe is that this short-term rental is a disruptive and new phenomenon, and housing is a huge structural problem. And unfortunately, we cross our paths, our ways. and a scapegoat in the sense that yes, he's part of the discussion in some areas, surely, and we have to find a balance in this. But usually, it's the specific neighborhoods in the center of the cities, old centers of the cities, and not a general thing. And they made it a general thing in terms of politics. So, lesson number one: we became a political topic. And the rules of political debate is completely different from rational and normal, discussions based on numbers and rational studies. They have their own agenda, and it's a very delicate situation. What we think we could show that is with a more balanced regulation, where still the cities will be able to negotiate and talk with the stakeholders, with us, to create in some specific areas, some rules to try so that short-term rental eventually don't get too concentrated, because there are areas that housing is not attractive. The historic centers, they were losing in Southern Europe, they were losing and being abandoned because they're not attractive for the new families. They are very costly in terms of renovation. And the people that want to go there, young people that go in the fourth floor without a lift and without parking and without transport, without infrastructures, usually they don't have the wage to pay for the renewed apartment. So they were falling and being abandoned in these areas. And short-term rental was a solution to rebuild these areas, because they are in the touristic areas. The people only stay 1 or 2 or 3 days, and it's another approach. But yes, of course, we are available to talk specifically when we have done our job in terms of renewing this area, and when it's time for the public, authorities to do their job to find another way of putting inhabitants there. That's still a problem here. And what we believe is that with this new regulation, we can eventually find a balance that we have to wait a few months or 1 or 2 years to see if this balance works, and the cities feel that they have some control in some exemption situations, like the city. If they can in some way direct short-term rental when they see that it's growing too fast for housings that are not used for permanent housings. And that was one of our main wars here. Is basically in Portugal, we have 1.1 million secondary homes and 7,500 empty homes. It's 2 million homes that are not used for permanent housing. So short-term rental doesn't need to go in the way of permanent housing. It's just a question of doing good regulation. What we don't want is populist regulation that brings a magic solution destroying short-term rental. And I think we have the chance to show that short-term rental can exist together with housing without affecting. And when it's growing too fast in a concentrated area, that we can redirect and avoid, taking out housing. We have to be aware of this also. And working on numbers. For example, this new law says that for the city to if they think they have some areas of concentration, they have to do a study and create ratios so that to show the areas that have this pressure and to act in this area, not bulk or blinded. And I think this could be a good example or model if it works. But it takes a little time for the cities to get ready, for us to feel the improvement. But it's a step forward.
I think those are all key points. So let me just ask you one more question, if that's okay, Eduardo. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but ultimately, what comes next for ALEP? The fight, the advocacy efforts aren't over with this new law. So, yeah, what are you looking forward to over the next couple of months?
Well, basically, after this national law, we will have to talk with the cities. We've about 20 or 25 cities that have relevant number of short-term rentals, to try to work with them in a balanced regulation in terms of looking to the future. Most of them, only 3 out of 300 cities felt in the past that they needed real restrictions. But we can work in a sustainable growth. That I think that's the word. We have to work in advance in a sustainable growth, redirecting short-term rental for this market that is that is sustainable. When you have a house that is empty 11 months a year, like a secondary home, using it to create jobs, it's a sustainable instead of building new constructions or new hotels or whatever. And that's what I think that's the next step. And the second one is finally being free of political discussions and regulation to get some stability. That's the main objective, to help the operators to become more professional. Professional in the sense, it doesn't matter if he's a owner of one unit, a individual or a company. Professional means that you have to be professional in the service that you provide for the guests, because they are betting all the holidays on you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Really appreciate your time, and I think I speak on behalf of the whole industry. And we wish you good luck with all your advocacy efforts, and well done for everything you're achieving so far.
Thank you for the invitation, and good luck also if you're spreading the word of what's going on in short-term rental.